Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we are back once again with the Steam machine from Alienware. In our last video, we got Windows 10 loaded up on it, and now we are running Windows 10. We're going to do some benchmarks as well as play Grand Theft Auto 5 on it with the Steam controller. So we'll see how we can kind of replicate that Steam OS experience but get better game compatibility. So I want to start first though with its performance on some of these benchmarks. We have that CloudGate test that we run on a lot of our other gaming PCs, and as you can see here, it is running at a really decent frame rate. In the official benchmark I was running earlier, we were getting frame rates in the hundreds of frames per second, so it's definitely on par with a good mid-tier gaming system, and I really like the form factor too. We've got a very small footprint here, a lot smaller than most modern game consoles and much more powerful. So on the official benchmark, when we ran this earlier, we got a score of 9,886, 128.2 frames per second on the first graphics test, 127 frames per second on the second test, and 9.4 frames per second on the physics test. And I think if we had a faster processor on the box, this one only has the i3, I think our score on 3DMark would have been higher. So it's about a third of what my GTX 970 gaming PC can do, but still it is very capable for a very small footprint PC. So I'm very impressed with the performance running here in Windows. Now before we load up Grand Theft Auto, I just wanted to show you how Steam works on here. So if you are a Steam Windows user, this will look very familiar to you. However, what I have done is hooked up my Steam controller here to my Steam machine, and it's all working. In fact, when you're in Windows, the controller can act as a mouse. And one of the things you can do on Windows here is just click on the little joystick icon and get yourself into big picture mode, just like we usually do when we boot directly into Steam OS. So you get largely the same exact functionality that you had before. I can go to my library. Of course, the difference now is that if I go over to Grand Theft Auto, I can actually run this game on my Steam machine and not get the message we were getting before. I can even go in and configure my controller. We can do all the things that we did earlier, like going into the community recommendations for different settings for the controller here, and all of those things will program themselves to this just like they do on the Steam OS side. So a very nice Steam experience, pretty much the same experience you'd have booting into this directly, but you will need some way to have a mouse to get yourself into that big picture mode initially when you first boot Windows. I did review a few months ago a keyboard from Logitech, a K830 I think it is, really nice home theater keyboard. It's got a trackpad integrated, so check out that video if you want to see a good solution for the living room. Now we're going to see how Grand Theft Auto 5 runs on it. All right, before we get into the performance benchmarks here on Grand Theft Auto, I just wanted to show you what my settings are looking like right now so you can see what I've got. I did turn the limits off, so I'm running beyond the limits of my video memory here, but so far I haven't had any crashes. So you can scroll, I'm going to scroll through here real quick so you can see what some of my settings are here for the game so you can get a feel for what I set everything at. Some mostly high settings. I could go a little bit higher, but I was seeing some frame rate drops there, so I went with the NVIDIA defaults, and then I cranked the resolution up from what they recommended on this particular graphics card to 1920 by 1080. I'll go over to the advanced settings here so you can see what I had there. And now what I'm going to do is just hit the tab key here and do a performance benchmark. And I've been actually pretty impressed with how well Grand Theft Auto 5 is running on this hardware with those settings. So we'll wait for that benchmark here to spin up and you can see what we're getting. So we're hovering in the 40 to 50 frames per second territory. I'm seeing, an average around 30 to 40 based on those settings you just saw. You're going to see some clipping going on in the video here because I only record at the moment at 30 frames per second. So any kind of clipping going on there is just the fault of my video capture hardware here. But you can see it's running pretty nicely actually, especially given the size of this hardware and the limited video RAM. It still is performing quite well, and I think it's actually going to look better than it would on an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, given that you have better processing capacity and certainly a better GPU also. So really decent performance out of this little box. I am quite impressed with it. It's running fine in Windows, and of course you can always pop that SanDisk thing that we hooked up earlier in that last video out of it and just get back to Steam OS. So there's very little risk in buying a Steam machine to a large degree because these really are full PCs that you can install Windows on if you have some compatibility issues with the games that you own. Now in the case of this machine, because Alienware is also making a Windows version of this, you might just want to opt for that. if you really don't want to go with SteamOS but like the hardware. So they have something called the Alienware Alpha, which is really the same hardware, but it runs Windows versus Steam. But I'm pretty impressed with what they've been able to put together here in a very small footprint. So you can see my original review posted above in the playlist, along with an interview that we had with somebody from Alienware too, where we talk about the development of this hardware, because it is a really nice machine and something that I think could really work very well in the living room. And of course, you're seeing here what it's capable of. And I would like to see better compatibility with SteamOS. I know there's been a lot of discussion from my initial review from folks who said, oh, it's got 1,600 games already. And, in my experience, just having been a video game player since, the 1980s, really the systems that have the games that people want to play are typically the systems that succeed. And right now, a lot of these titles, especially one like Grand Theft Auto, isn't on SteamOS just yet. And I hate to keep reminding people of this, but in order for a platform to succeed, it needs the titles that people want to play. And I hope we'll start seeing more of those make their way to SteamOS. But that said, this is a very low-risk kind of transaction because, again, you can install Windows on here and you will be just fine and be able to run all of those games, and as you saw here, pretty well. One last thing to talk about, I did load up Kodi and I hooked it up to my home theater system in the next room. I was able to get movies to play back just fine. The one thing it didn't support was the higher-end HD audio format, so DTS HD and Dolby True HD did not play back just yet. I think there might be some drivers I have to pick up, so I'm going to experiment a little bit more with that, and if I have success, I will post a future follow-up video on using this as a home theater machine too. This is Lon.TV, thanks for watching. This channel is brought to you by the generosity of my Patreon supporters. If you find the channel helpful, you too can contribute for as little as $1 a month. Visit Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more.